The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shades thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yes, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, October 1st. Today is it's National Jiffy Mix Day.
Is that like concrete or?
No, Jiffy, you know, this stuff. Well, I mean, maybe if you bake it wrong, you know what I'm saying? I have seen some concrete muffins before, you know what I'm saying, Dale?
Made a few myself, yeah.
See, you know exactly what I'm talking about then. Exactly. Well, it's also National Walk to School Day today. I'm not sure if it's safe for kids to be walking to school like that all the time. You never know.
Well,
I mean,
we survived it in my age, so I think they'll be okay.
I think that's a good point, Dale. Good point. I know I walked to school back and forth, uphill both ways. You know,
in the snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Let's see. It's also National Pumpkin Seed Day today, October 1st, beginning of fall. You know what I mean?
Pumpkin seeds, huh? Okay.
Pumpkin spice latte day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
exactly. And then you know, it's also National Coffee with a Cop Day.
Yeah,
it's supposed to have supposed to have coffee with law enforcement today.
Yeah, you got to have them donuts, man. Them oily cakes.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. And let's see, it's also National Fire Pup Day. What the hell is fire pup? Is that? I think that's a food. Give me a second, Dale. Let me check this out. Let me
like the fire station Dalmatian.
Or a spicy hot dog or something.
You might, you guys. Those are all good guesses today, you guys. Those are all good guesses. Let's see. National. Oh, it's Dalmatians. It's National Fire Pups Day. Fire station pups. It is for. Yeah, it is for Dalmatians. On October 1st, National Fire Pup Day honors the brave canines who have served and continue to serve alongside our firefighters. From the iconic spotted Dalmatian running beside a horse-drawn engine to the highly trained nose of a modern arson dog, these four-legged heroes hold a special place in the firehouse and in our hearts, it says. That was cute. Very, 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 very cute. And it is you're gonna love this, Dale. This might be your favorite right here. It's National Pumpkin Spice Day.
Yeah. I'm a black coffee kind of guy.
Yeah.
Loves all that extra stuff they put in coffee.
Let's see. And it's also National Green City Day.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Really?
Maybe this would be a great day for us to you know what I'm saying, get the territory of Greenland then, apparently.
Yeah. Well, that's beyond green. That's kind of cold there.
You know. Let's see. It's also National Black Dog Day. It's interesting. Black dogs have a day. It's also National Hair Day. I have amazing hair, so you know what I mean. I can celebrate that today.
Kind of falling out in a lot of places.
Hey, you still got some shade up there a little bit, Dale. Still got a little bit of shade.
Migrates further down my face and my body as I get older.
Yeah,
gravity's been taking all of Chris's hair, Dale.
Yeah,
it's the gravity effect.
It's that gene, gorilla gene. It grows more on my chest than it does on my hair, on my head. I don't know what to tell you.
It's National Homemade Cookies Day.
Now that I can get into. My grandchildren love when I show up with cookies.
Yeah, and let's see. And today is also Random Acts of Poetry Day. Well, I'm very poetic. Just saying.
Yeah, we've heard.
Oh, yes. Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. That's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.high9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And today we're starting off with Wisconsin. Because if you fail, you must try again. Because the Wisconsin GOP lawmakers introduced a bill to legalize marijuana, you guys. That's right. 3 Republican state lawmakers in Wisconsin have introduced a bill to legalize medical marijuana after multiple previous failed attempts. Republican state lawmakers introduced a bill Monday to legalize medical marijuana after previous attempts to legalize the drug for medical use have failed. The new bill, sponsored by State Senator Patrick Tilston, Republican from Stevens Point, Senate President Mary Felkowski, Republican from Tomahawk, and State Representative Patrick Snyder, Republican from Weston, requires patients to have a doctor's diagnosis and register through a new state office. In a quote, they say, "The position on cannabis has changed dramatically in the last several years," Teston said. Like previous attempts to legalize medical cannabis, patients must have a doctor's diagnosis or a serious medical condition like cancer, multiple sclerosis, PTSD, IBS, Parkinson's, or severe chronic pain to access medical cannabis. They then must register with the new Office of Medical Cannabis Regulation. That office would also oversee licensing for cannabis growers, processors, and testers. And in a quote, they say, "We want to allow private industry to come in here," Teston said. "There are companies all across the country who have been very effective and impactful in delivering medical cannabis to patients," he says. A 2024 attempt by Assembly Republicans spearheaded by Speaker Robin Vaos proposed state-run dispensaries, but the bill did not gain Senate support. In a quote, "Dead is a strong word, and I think it's unlikely that it's going to pass this session," unfortunately, Vaos told reporters last year. The latest bill sponsors hope that by keeping some of the restrictions from last session's legislation but opening production up to the private sector, they will gain more support. And in a quote, they say, "I just know my road in the assembly will be challenging," Snyder said. And under the new bill, patients could ingest medical marijuana through oils, tinctures, edibles, and vapors, but would not be allowed to smoke it. If you're going to allow them to vape it, that's the same thing as smoking it, you guys. But nonetheless, they got another quote. "I've had a lot of my bills kind of get delayed one session after another, and just from reading rooms now, with my experience, this is going to take a pretty gigantic Hail Mary to get all the way through. But Hail Marys have happened," Snyder said. Democratic Governor Tony Evers proposed legalized adult use marijuana in his latest budget, but Republican lawmakers quickly dismissed the idea, and Wisconsin remains virtually an island in the Midwest, with all surrounding states legalizing some form of medical or adult use cannabis. And currently, medical cannabis is legal in 40 U.S. states, with 25 of those also allowing its adult use, you guys. Well, this little Wisconsin, this little baskin of prohibition might just change a new leaf. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. And it's introduced by Republicans, you guys. What do you got to say about that? Look at that.
I mean, I have nothing against that. I think it's, Wisconsin has been a final holdout for a long time, but I know that, this is going to take a hit for all those people that are, border dispensaries in Illinois and Michigan that have been, opportunistic with Wisconsin being illegal. So, but it needs to happen. It's going to happen one way or another. Maybe if this one doesn't pass, they'll do it again in a couple of years. I don't really know a lot of the background politics of Wisconsin, but looking at it, I've spent time in Minnesota. That whole region is going to go next.
Well, it's controlled. It's controlled by the dairy industry. It has the big stronghold out there.
Yeah. Well, cheese and weed go together pretty well.
I mean, technically, cheese is a form of weed.
I'm shocked that a Republican would propose in any way having a state-run industry. That's hard for me to wrap my head around.
Yep.
Every place that government's been involved in running a business, they run it right into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why in the world that would be something they're even talking about. And of course, you can buy weed in Wisconsin. I mean, no one wants to talk about that, because if you make it illegal in the legal market, it's still available in every alley. Every
exactly.
city.
That very, very, very true. You know what I'm saying?
I don't understand when these states pass these rules to make flour illegal. Like, oh, we're going to allow it, but in its pure raw form, it's still illegal. It seems like every state, one by one, that tries doing that. I mean, Florida did that early on. A buddy of mine has a license in Mississippi, and he dealt with that early on. And within a year or two, they realized, like, well, we're losing an opportunity, and we'll allow flour, but maybe we'll put it special package where it has to be vaped instead of smoked, or it's like they don't want to fully let the genie out of the bottle.
Well, so you're right about that, Chris, but in here it doesn't say that they're not allowing raw flour. It just says you can't smoke. So, like Puerto Rico, you know what I mean? Like they'll sell you flour, but you have to like say that you're only going to vaporize it. So they, like they don't allow you to sell pre-rolls because they say that you can't burn it. You know what I mean? But they will sell you flour.
Florida did that in the beginning, and they had these like vapable pods with some nugs in it, and then people were just ripping them open and smoking it anyway.
Yep, exactly.
So
I just don't know what delusional space their heads in, thinking that you can sell somebody flour and they're only going to vape it. I mean, just give me We used to have flour and stop and buy a can of Coke or a can of beer and smoke out of the goddamn can. So
I remember that.
What do you think you're accomplishing here? It's mind-numbing how stupid people are. And I don't know where their heads are, because you can buy flour everywhere. You can buy hash everywhere. You can buy other concentrates in the black market, and people are going to do what they can most easily do. And, people can still roll a joint. I think even my all arthritic hands can still roll a joint.
You can roll a joint, Dale? I would like to see that. I would like to see that.
I can damn sure poke a few holes in a Coke can and figure out a way to smoke some flour. Come on.
Well, and I know Wisconsin's been a huge hemp state for a long time now. And a lot of these, Delta 9 THCA beverages are sourcing product, hemp from Wisconsin, because Wisconsin is one of the few states that just defaults to USDA oversight for their hemp program. So on the hemp side, they've been super loose. So for them to try to introduce medical and have it under this lock and key is kind of hypocritical.
Fair enough.
It's stupid. It is. It's stupid.
I totally agree. And, it is pretty ridiculous that, they're going to do this, but,
but as we say, with rescheduling or anything, at least they're talking about it. At least it's a foot in the door.
And if the
patient count explodes, it shows that flaw in the system, and then it's going to roll into the next step of recreational. Hopefully,
I see what you did there with that roll right into the next step. That was cute. And on that, exactly. We're going to roll into our first commercial, and we're going to be right back.
keep talking the same shit.
And we are back, Dale. We are back. Well, I covered a story about this yesterday, and it turns out that it sparked some people's interest apparently, because there were hundreds at a protest to propose a marijuana tax hike in Michigan's capital yesterday. You guys, look at that. Hundreds of people were at the Michigan Capitol on Tuesday morning to protest a proposed new tax on marijuana that's become part of state leaders' last-ditch effort to avoid a government shutdown that would begin at midnight. Inside the Capitol, demonstrators chanted, "Save our jobs!" while outside, people carried signs with messages like, "Don't tax my peace." In 2018, Michigan voters approved a ballot initiative to legalize adult-use marijuana and impose a 10% excise tax on retail sales. Now, 7 years later, lawmakers are considering adding a 24% tax on wholesale marijuana before it's sold to customers at stores, to create a stream of new revenue to invest in road improvements. But both Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who first floated the marijuana tax hike, and Republican House Speaker Matt Hall of Richland Township have prioritized investments in infrastructure this year. The new tax is expected to generate approximately $420 million in additional annual revenue for the state, according to the nonpartisan House Fiscal Agency. But opponents like George Lynch of Niles said the plan would kill the industry and ultimately diminish the revenue flowing into state coffers. In a quote, "The money is coming in and supporting the state," Lynch said. "Now they're literally going to turn around and damage the industry, and they're going to lose money instead of gaining money. They're not going to get any more money out of this," he says. Last year, Michigan's adult-use marijuana retail sales came in at about $3.2 billion with a B dollars, according to monthly reports from the Cannabis Regulatory Agency. And Lynch, who owns a marijuana shop named Green Steam in Niles, said organizers of Tuesday's protest were expecting as many as 2,000 people to be at the Capitol on the final day of Michigan's current fiscal year. For months, lawmakers in the GOP-led House and Democratic-controlled Senate have been struggling to reach a compromise on the new state budget as lawmakers seek additional dollars for roads, while Republicans in the House also look to institute spending cuts for departments. The House approved the bill to bring the new 24% tax on wholesale marijuana in addition to the retail tax on Thursday. Hall touted the fact that the 24% total was lower than the 32% rate that's levied on tobacco and that was floated by Whitmer back in February. And in a quote, they say, "We thought the 32% tax the Democrats were proposing for marijuana on this wholesale value was too much," Hall said. "And we were concerned about how that might affect the industry. We want to have an industry. Voters have said it's legal." And the state now needs to approve the tax bill for it to be sent to Whitmer's desk, and a vote might take place at some point on Tuesday. But protesters against the policy were planning to fill the gallery above the Senate floor for much of the day, and Adam Rapp, who said he manages a cannabis retail dispensary in Kalamazoo, was among the demonstrators in the Capitol on Tuesday morning. In a quote, they say, "It could literally mean the difference of having the dispensary open or not," Rapp said of the proposed tax increase. "We have local neighborhood customers who really can't afford a price increase," Rapp said. Democrats hold a 19-18 majority in the Senate, and Senator John Brumsted, Republican from North Muskegon, said he plans to vote against the proposed tax increase on marijuana, and businesses in the industry have invested in the state and created jobs here, and he said, "We don't want to run them out of business," Brumsted said. And roughly 39,000 people are employed in the marijuana industry in Michigan, according to state records. And on the other side of the aisle, Senator Sue Schink, Democrat from Northfield Township, didn't comment to voting one way or the other on the marijuana tax increase, but Schink said she's been advocating against the idea. And in a quote, she says, I'm trying to be open to the very complex situation while advocating for a better solution," Schink said. Well, Michigan, I'll tell you what, do not impose this tax. You are going to totally tank your whole industry. We've seen it happen in numerous marketplaces, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
It's the most taxed product, the most taxed commodity we've ever seen ever.
It's crazy. It's an agricultural crop.
Yeah, and Michigan already has some of the lowest pound prices in the country, you know, and how are these guys going to survive? I totally agree. This is a failure. It's a big cash grab. Um, I know a couple guys in Michigan, and you know, there's way too many grows, and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Oh, we tried it in California, and it's like, should we send them a telegram about how it worked here? We used to
Right.
have that cultivation tax. Remember that? And it was like, who's going to collect it? And nobody wanted to collect it. No one could afford it. And there's no other model out there that you can point to. I mean, with tobacco, they're trying to tax and regulate tobacco use out of existence.
Yep.
Most people agreed. We're cool with that. This next generation right now is smoking more weed than they're drinking.
Yeah.
So if you don't think that's, something on the horizon to be paying attention to, the other thing is these goddamn governments keep spending more money than they got. And they're looking around for a cash cow. And I'm telling you, the cannabis industry is not a viable cash cow. It's just not. Because if you make it too hard to do it legally, black market's right there. We'll take your money, and you're getting zero for taxes out of that. And that's where you've got to focus this. The rubber meets the road. You want taxes and 60 to 80% of the markets off the books. Okay. You're not even getting close to utilizing your power to tax to get, an industry up and to have a stream of revenue.
Yeah.
It's just, we sell a pocket of money here. We're just going to take it. Well, the guys sitting down at the end of the month paying their bills are going, we don't have any money. How do we do this?
Right.
Okay. And so then, I got an extra, 20 pounds in the barn over here. I'm going to move it out into the black market because they'll pay me cash. That's how you put people in these positions. And I'm not advocating you do that, but it's a reality. You got to run your business, and they're taxing the shit out of you. You find ways to get around those taxes. It's sort of the American way. And it's, why do we keep having this discussion?
Yeah.
Like, if you've got average intelligence, do I have to tell you 50 goddamn times the same thing before it registers for you? I just don't get this.
It's a crazy world. Crazy world we're in.
That's an interesting comparison you made, Dale, with tobacco, because I guess some people would argue that they want to tax cannabis for harm reduction, much like alcohol or tobacco. But
yeah, it's a sin tax.
Sin tax, but alcohol prohibition didn't even last a decade. It was like 9 years, and there was an established industry before and after prohibition. Cannabis has been illegal for almost 100 years. There's no one alive that remembers a pre-prohibition period, and there wasn't really an industry before prohibition that had to take a pause. So people are very comfortable going back to the old ways tomorrow, and bypass all these taxes. It's not really accomplishing anything from the point of view of harm reduction. It is just a cash grab, and an unfortunate one, because there's no other agricultural commodity or even sin that you can tax to that level. And it just shows that they've been unable to regulate it, unable to control it in every other way. So they're just slapping taxes on it, and they don't really care what the spillover is from that. They're just willing to deal with it to get whatever they can. And unfortunately, the operators that are trying to do everything right are going to take the brunt of that hit, and the guys that are on the margins of morality will gladly bypass this. So it doesn't do anything for anyone trying to do everything right. It's the same thing with pesticides or anything else. The bad actors will always find the loophole, and the people trying to do everything right will have to take the brunt of the hit.
Very, very true. Very, very true.
Yeah.
It's a no-win, and I hope all these Republicans vote no on it. I hope they can build a coalition of Democrats around it to vote no on this. Michigan, I'm pulling for you. I hope that this, because you can find other things to tax in Michigan besides taxing cannabis, and the fact that, just like you had said, they want to compare it to the tax on tobacco, when tobacco there's no medical benefit to consuming tobacco. You know what I mean? Where there's actually, people do actually have medical benefits when consuming cannabis. And it's kind of a shame that they want to view it in that same perspective. I'm with you, Chris. Should not be viewed as a sin tax. It should be viewed as a wellness thing. And maybe people should be able to write it off on their taxes for wellness expenses or whatnot, since insurance doesn't cover it yet.
Not yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, Maha's coming soon, so you know what I'm saying? Just stay tuned, Dale. We might just have some news for you coming up on something like that. But nonetheless, we're going to keep this train rolling. We're going to roll right into attorney at law, Mr. Dale Schafer. Dale has been an attorney since the Reagan administration. He has represented physicians, hospitals, insurance companies, cops, corrections officers, and for the last 25 years, he has specialized in cannabis law. He served a 5-year federal prison sentence for helping medical marijuana patients and managed to save his law license. He's blunt. He doesn't smoke them because they're ratchet nasty and they make your breath stink, but he is honest and he's unconcerned with public opinions, your opinions, and everyone else's opinion for that matter, and he can show you how he can defy gravity by pissing up a rope. Here is your favorite Tio Loco, and you can now find him at his own law office, at the law office of none other than Dale Schafer.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My story, this is Tio Loco.
Yeah.
You're a crazy guy for the morning. Mm-hmm. My story this morning comes out of MJ Biz Daily from 29th, and it's by Margaret Jackson. And her headline is Why Cannabis Edibles Need Extra Food Safety Measures. Now, I've set up a number of manufacturing facilities here in California. And part of my standard operating procedure is to bring in what we call an industrial hygienist as we're working on the plans to set up manufacturing facility, especially if we're going to have what you might call a kitchen where we're going to make edibles. And we bring in the hygienist. We work on basic SOPs of how these pieces of equipment are going to be used and the cleanliness in the room. But that's basically what states are requiring. They don't go a whole lot beyond that. California requires your SOPs on how you're going to actually manufacture these edible products, but they don't require at this point that you get companies involved, put together quality management systems and good manufacturing practices. This is an entire industry out there in the edible food market that has not been required in the cannabis market yet. And so this is a hole in our protection, if you will, in the industry, because we don't make enough money to really go looking for everything we can do to make our products as safe as we can, be defensible. We just want to get up and run. And the industry does basically the bare minimum. Okay, but this story recounts somebody who works within these management systems and does these manufacturing practices and procedures for companies. Walked into a manufacturing plant, nobody had headgear on, hair was hanging out, people weren't washing their hands properly, they weren't wearing their personal protective equipment to make it clean and sanitary. There was water and crap on the floor. He was horrified. Okay, now I've had discussions with my clients where we're talking about beyond just setting up, how are you going to actually run this? And in the consumable goods industry out there, where you're making products for people to consume orally, okay, there's entire industries out there that help these manufacturers stay out of trouble. Because here's what happens. Every state has laws that prevent bad products, okay? And you hurt somebody, you're going to get sued by the citizens out there who got your product. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's a problem. Every state will recall. Either have a voluntary recall because you figured out, oh shit, we got metal shavings in here, or there's pesticides in this or whatever. But then the government will mandate recalls. Now, when I'm sitting down with my clients and we're talking about this, you write down how much it's going to cost to do a recall. It will torpedo your business. So now you got to have insurance. Okay? And insurance companies just don't insure you as a knucklehead. Okay? You need to look at the declarations and the preclusions part of these policies to see what they say they'll cover and then what they say they won't cover. Okay? Because the last time you want to have this discussion, or the worst time to have this discussion with an attorney, is after you got notice that you got a recall or someone suing you or a class action's being brought because you put a product out that was not safe within these quality standards. It's a conundrum in the industry right now because I like to be extra safe. I was an insurance defense attorney for a long time. So I look at these businesses as, okay, we got to have belt and suspenders to protect you from litigation or from the state rolling in and shutting you down, or from recalls. So how do you do that? Right? This requires thought. It requires people who are interested in what it really means to make a safe product, and will work on the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, to make sure you come in the building and there's separation from the outside and this clean facility. Wear hair nets, face masks, gloves, PPEs to protect the product. Every product that goes through a machine has, a magnet somewhere or some sensor to tell you, are we putting metal into our product? Okay. And I have set these facilities up with people to a certain point, and then they don't want to use my services anymore, which is cool. And then you come back later, and I'm horrified at, it's not just people picking their nose and then going and making edible products. The entire process does not have food safety in its SOPs. And you try to explain to people, it's better money spent now to get this set up correctly, and now you've been sued, and you really don't have any choice but to hire lawyers and spend money out your nose when you could have done this ahead of time. The industry is not good at this yet. States are requiring that you get these businesses involved and that you have an extra layer of protection. The federal regulations require certain SOPs to be able to put out a quality food product out there, or even a pharmaceutical product. Some states, you'll see in this article, mandate that level. Others require that you set up independent levels of practices here that meet the quality standards in the general food or pharmaceutical market. Okay? So just as a word of warning, if you're not looking to set up these practices and taking steps to make sure what comes in your facilities is clean, what goes through them is clean, and what comes out, so that when you get sued for having a product that you touched, you can defend yourself. This is money well spent. As we just talked about, if they're taking tax money from you that you don't have, okay, and now you're having a meeting that, hey, we've got to set up some quality, we're going to bring a new line of product in, we need to spend $5,000 for a quality control, a review that gives us certification. People are going, okay, do we want to spend this? We have to get any extra equipment, extra training. They don't like to do that because it costs money. Okay. But I can tell you, when you hire me or somebody like me to come in and protect your ass, you better have a couple $100,000 readily available to pay attorneys if you don't have the insurance to cover this. Okay. And if you do have insurance to cover this, and they take a look at your SOPs, and you got people in there picking their nose or grabbing their ass and going to make edibles, okay, and that's why you're getting yourself sued, don't be surprised if your insurance company says, either we're going to reserve our rights and maybe not pay this claim, or if they do pay the claim, they're not going to renew your policy. I'll tell you right now, the insurance industry has more control over business than the government ever thought to have. Because if you need insurance for something, or your attorney's telling you better be insured here, and you can't get insurance unless you do A, B, and C, guess what? Businesses will be doing A, B, and C. Not because the government tells them, but because it'll, a decent lawsuit will wipe your ass out, especially if they're not covered for insurance. So these are important things to think about, but when you don't have money, okay, it becomes a real issue. So this raises some concerns here about having meetings and doing what the basic food and pharmaceutical industry does without being told. But as you'll see in the industry, it's like, if they're not making us do it, we're not going to do it. So people are going to get caught with a recall that they can't pay for, or for some product gets out there and they get their ass sued for it, and they're bare, or they don't have enough coverage. I can go on about this all day long. It gets boring. But this is important if you're going to run a business in the United States where you can get sued and your product can cost you your business. I'm going to throw it back at you. What do you guys think about this?
Wow, Dale. This doesn't surprise me that people in the cannabis space aren't taking proper precautions or whatnot, or trying to make the most out of this. It definitely is not a good look on them in my opinion. This is just not the way to go. on this, but it doesn't surprise me at all, you know, in all reality, Dale, that people don't take this stuff seriously. I mean, you have the people, I forget what state that was, but that were using a co-shared kitchen, and all of a sudden it was a pizza, like a pizza people, and they made a medicated pizza and didn't even realize that they were doing it because they used somebody else's ingredients that were in the shared kitchen. You know what I mean? It's like these everybody like, oh, I want to have a cannabis company, I want to do this, but no one wants to really step up to the plate and really execute it in the way that other businesses execute their business. It's a shame. Everyone thinks they can have shortcuts.
Well, you can until you get sued.
Oh, okay, that's the FAFO part.
Will bury you.
That's the FAFO part right there, Dale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but see, I try to help people set these businesses up, and you know, you try to give them a budget of what it's going to take, and they cut corners because they don't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But when you get sued, now you don't really have a lot of options.
Yeah.
Right, because now it's, you know, if you're going to retain me or another firm that does litigation, you know, we may ask for $10, $15, $20, $30,000 retainer.
Mm-hmm.
We bill it a high amount, and you don't pay us. I go right to court and say, you know, they ain't paying us, Your Honor. We're out of here.
Yep.
Okay. That's where the rubber really meets the road.
Oh, and it doesn't look good for you in court if your lawyer goes before the judge and says, "Hey, I'm dropping my client because they're not paying their bill." Like that's a bad look. I've seen that happen to a few people in court a few times, and it's just like, oh my God, you got to be so embarrassed.
It's not just embarrassed; it really puts you behind the eight ball, because the average person running these businesses doesn't understand the bigger picture, and especially what happens in the court systems. There's so much confusion amongst the average person about what the courts are really like. People think you can do stuff in the courts that are just, you're fucking insane. You're never going to do that there. It doesn't happen that way. And there's traps in the system. If you don't understand the procedures and rules of evidence and things like that, you lose your case. These are going to be multi-million-dollar hits. And, you know, for any state that's starting this, I can't emphasize enough, you really have to take your time in setting these up. But the way it goes is like you're trying to just win a spot, and you've got some money, and there's a lot of strings attached to the money because you don't go to a bank and get a loan. Okay. Your accountant's telling you got all these 280E problems, and you got only this small amount to spend. Right. So you're trying to run a business, but downside of somebody getting sick from eating something. I mean, look at what happens when salmonella gets in something that's sold at Walmart, or they got a radioactive fucking shrimp or something like that.
Yeah.
If you put, you know, if you're depending on paying your bills from a run of a couple $100,000 of product and it all gets recalled, okay, number one, you're not making any money, so you can't pay your bills. Number two, you're going to be paying money to recall it. If you don't have your contract set up so that you're going to be held harmless and indemnified, and you've got insurance coverage that overlaps, you're an additional insured, so that if you didn't do this, you can really get out for, you know, maybe $10, $15, $20,000 out of a case rather than $500,000 to multiple millions of dollars. You know, I get those shit sandwiches, and then we start having discussions, and people want to cry. You know, it's like, this ain't fair. No, it ain't fair. But you made conscious decisions about where to spend money, which I understand. But now you got a class action coming against you because something ended up in your gummy. It's poisonous. Yep. Okay. And maybe the cultivator put it in there, and nobody really found it until it got out in the marketplace. And now someone's suing you because their little kid got sick or something. You know, it's bread and butter for attorneys, but for running a business, this is the fate accompli.
Like
it'll kill your business.
Yeah, it's crashing the Titanic into the iceberg right there.
Yeah, there.
What are you gonna say, Chris?
That's the nail in the coffin. I mean, from my perspective as an operator, I have seen a lot. And, you know, we actually have a GMP inspection coming here where I'm at in about a month. And we have to, you know, follow all those good practices. And I have a good buddy of mine who's an operator in Denver who, you know, he's telling me all this GMP stuff is coming down the pipeline there. And he's not used to it. Obviously, even reporting safety incidents, things like that, they haven't had to do up until now, which is kind of funny to hear that from Colorado, which you would expect to be ahead of everybody else. overall, ideologically, I'm not really for a lot of regulation or oversight in this industry because a lot of it is kind of mismanaged. But in the case of food, especially, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. People can get sick. It should be regulated like any other food. Consumer safety should be number one. I think that is something that's been ignored in a lot of cannabis oversight in general. It has been about taxation and control rather than consumer safety. Consumer safety is always on the back burner. So, and in my experience, I'm not going to say every company that produces edibles, but more than 50% of the companies that produce edibles are doing it because they can process something that is subpar. They're mass a product that isn't really fit for smoking because they're able to remediate it, filter it, and kind of hide a bad grow. So that's very common in edibles, and a lot of things can sneak through. And I think there should be a lot of oversight on edibles from the point of view of consumer safety. And every time I do a lot of conferences around the country, if I'm in a new market, Minnesota, Michigan, New Jersey, people hand me these edibles like, oh, we're starting this company. I'm like, I already know that, more than likely it's, it's like bathtub gin. Cannabis is equivalent. And forget even consumer safety from the point of view of, you can have listeria, salmonella, all this other contamination, but even just wrongful dosing. They'll tell you it's 10 milligrams and it's 50 milligrams. And then you're like, oh shit, I have to do. And I'm blasted out of my mind right now. Yeah. And so, you don't want grandma who's got arthritis that thinks she's taking a 5 milligram edible that wasn't dosed properly to send her to the moon and end up in the ER. And I think edibles are the number one cause of people having a negative reaction to cannabis. It's not generally smoking flower or anything else. It's 9 times out of 10, I'm willing to bet that ER visit from people that freaked out on cannabis is because of an edible. Because it metabolizes into something completely different in your body, in your liver, and people aren't ready for it. And you can smoke some weed if you get too high, eat some candy, come back down, but you eat an edible. You to quote
you're along for the ride.
Yeah, you bought the ticket, you take the ride. There's no jumping that merry-go-round now. So I'm all for regulating this, and knowing what I know, seeing what I've seen. I think they definitely need to put the hammer down and make consumer safety the number one priority.
Nick Bradley in the chat, he says, how many facilities have you been to that allow their employees to wear their street clothes, no hair nets, no beard nets, et cetera, and I've pretty much everyone that I've ever been in, I have seen that, you know what I mean? And and I think a lot of these places when they're like, oh, we want to get as much flowering space out of our facility as we possibly can. Like that's the whole focus, and there's not a lot of focus on like adequate changing rooms where like you actually can't even enter the facility without going through the changing room. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably one of the big problems. I mean, even for people that take tours, you know what I mean? They don't. There's no mandatory. You got to go through this. I've been to some places that do have it somewhat together, but I went to this this place in Germany, and it was like a gentleman's club in Germany. Okay, this was probably how I think all of the cannabis facilities should ultimately probably be somewhere similar to as much as they've maintained on this place. Is you basically
full body condom.
Hold on. You walk in. All right, Chris. You walk into this place, and you go in and you check in at the stand, and then they give you a locker key. And then at that point, you go into the locker room, you have to shower, and then they give you a bathrobe, right? And some little little fuzzy slippers to wear around. And that's it. everything else has to go into the locker room, and then you go into the facility, and all the chicks are in there walking around butt naked, and they just will have a towel every once in a while, and if they're going to sit down, they'll throw a towel on whatever chair or whatnot. But like, that's in essence is what these cannabis facilities need to have, as far as their cleanliness of their environment, as far as the protocols for when they bring people into their facility.
Absolutely. And I've been at a couple facilities that I worked with, especially in Southern California, that did have those standards. But sometimes, when the profitability of the company goes down, they're like, all right, we can skip the showers for this week, or too many people,
let's save on the water bill.
You had to hire a bunch of people, or like in the case of like Glass House Farms or a company like that, they're just bringing in employees. They don't have time to screen, to change everybody. They're like, just go in there, get it done. And so corners get cut, and it really comes from the point of view of greed, being just short-sighted and profit-minded. I even coming from the legacy days, from the old trap, it was like a rule, like you shower, you wear fresh set of clothes when you're going in your grow. You don't mow the lawn and go into your garden. That was from the old school, but a lot of these guys weren't from the old school even, and don't abide by that. When we do investor tours, when we even have state inspectors show up, they are full PPE'd. I took my beard net off right before I turned my camera on here. I was coming out of the grow. I had to take all this stuff off. And sometimes it's annoying, but I don't want to buy weed that has one of these beard hairs in it, if I'm a consumer, and that's what it takes. Well, and it's really not asking a lot from the point of view of any other industry. And, cannabis should be no exception. But like I said, a lot of the regulations that have been in place up until now have been to control the markets, to control the producers, and to tax them. It with the excuse of consumer safety. It hasn't been with the actual
mask
priority.
Yeah, with the mask of consumer safety. But you know what,
like
Chris? Go ahead, please.
I was saying, we talk about metric and track and trace software quite a bit on here. And one of the promises of that technology was to be able to do controlled recalls and have batch numbers going all the way back. And for the most part, these state programs have failed with that. It's really just been there to create this enforcement layer to fine and tax these companies with, like I said, the excuse of consumer safety, but they've not been able to successfully execute on that.
No, well, and on that, with all of these different facilities and whatnot, Chris, you just have to ask yourself, I think for sometimes it is a lot for these cannabis companies to ask, because especially for people that have been in the space for a long period of time, because it's like, oh, I've been doing this, what I mean? We've been trimming in our living room with dog hair all over the floor, and no one's ever got sick before, and we've never had an incident before. So why do we need to have it now? And I think a lot of people are still stuck in that type of a mindset of where, I haven't had an incident before, so why should I have an incident now?
Well, and, not to defend anybody that has a dirty grow, but there was a different mindset and attitude when it was the kind of heady, humble guys that you have the occasional German Shepherd hairs in your weed. But they weren't cutting corners the same way as the purely profit-minded big companies. And as you scale these things, the risk of contamination gets much higher and less oversight. I would rather have a little bit of dog hair than, some of these big companies that are like, oh, we're going to just trim it on a barn. If a whole row of plants falls on the floor, who cares? Just throw it back on there. You wouldn't believe some of the things that you see when it's scaled up and greed gets involved, essentially.
Fair enough.
Well, this is an industry that is still in the nascent stage. And there really haven't been a lot of big lawsuits filed yet. I mean, recalls are something you expect. But, I've been practicing law long enough to have seen the worst of what you can possibly imagine happening. And imagine grandma taking a gummy she thinks is 5, and it's got actually 100 milligrams in it. And she leaves the freeway, takes an off-ramp, T-bones somebody, and kills them in a car. Okay? That happens, all right? And so I come in and go, all right, I'm going to sue the shit out of everybody. I send out what we call subpoenas for all of your SOPs. Everybody who touched this product, what you did, bring it in your facility, what you did while it was there. And they go, well, we don't have any of those things. Okay, here's your problem. If you're making something someone's going to consume, there's what we call a standard of care. You have to produce a safe product, okay? And if it's an unsafe product you put out and you can't demonstrate that you weren't the one that acted unsafe, okay, and follow the standard of care, you're just going to be throwing money into this thing. And so it's defensive, but it's old farts like me sitting down and go, look, let me tell you something. Let's talk about what bad can happen and how do you mitigate that before it happens. And that's where a lack of money and a lack of concern for safety as opposed to making money, this industry does not know what to do. Yep. Okay, they don't. And also these vertically integrated companies, my family worked in the dairy industry. You brought milk in, it was tested for you, brought in your facility. You had these QMPs that were set up for every stage of the process, third parties looking at it as you made these products. So if something happened, you could pull up within your system and show who touched it, who did what. Hey, where did this problem happen? And we can fix it internally. The insurance company will handle it and pay it, and then you correct your system. We're not even close to that yet. And I hate to think that someone's going to have to die or get seriously hurt before someone takes this seriously. But that's the American system. They don't really change until it blows up in their face and, oh, maybe I better fix it now. Well, okay, somebody's dead or somebody's permanently disabled. You want to save a few extra bucks in your process.
Well, you know, and to that point, there have been some employees that have died in facilities. You know what I'm saying? And those things doesn't seem like those have been cleaned up or whatnot since then. So maybe it will, maybe it won't. But on that, we're going to roll into our next commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Every legend has a humble beginning.
In world news, leaders are gathering today for the annual summit.
I want to tell you something, Che. The government is watching us through the television.
Oh, John.
Look, right there. They're trying to hack into my TV box.
We're still not able to hack into the TV box, sir.
Ha! But they can't. I've rebuilt the entire electronic system, and it sends and receives signals through quantum phase space. They'll never get in. Engage target.
In other news, local authorities are investigating a series of strange atmospheric phenomena reported by residents.
Ma'am, we're with the federal government. We need to ask you some questions.
John?
Is there a problem? We've been trying to penetrate your TV box for over 6 months.
I told you they were trying to watch us through the TV, but you didn't believe me.
We can't get in, and to be frank, we have no idea what you've created.
Yeah, that's the point. It's called privacy. You know what the Fourth Amendment guarantees?
All we know is that we can't get inside. We want to know if you can create one for us.
QUX. Even the government wants one.
And we are back, and we are going to roll right into Mr. Chris Vaos. Chris Vaos is a seasoned cannabis industry professional with over 15 years experience in commercial cultivation. He has led large-scale indoor, greenhouse, and outdoor operations across various U.S. markets, specializing in cultivation, optimization, team leadership, and cost-efficient scaling. With a background in engineering and data-driven science-based approach, Christopher consistently delivers strong results in plant health, productivity, and operational safety. It is none other than Mr. Christopher Vaos.
And this article is coming to you from businessofcannabis.com. This is about the European Union to establish adult use cannabis pathways for member states. Finally, we've all been waiting around for this. With increasing numbers of countries embracing cannabis, the European Union is launching a toolkit to help national policymakers frame their adult use legislation. In doing so, it's aligning with the continent's changing cannabis landscape as Germany, the Netherlands, Malta, Czech, Luxembourg, and non-EU neighbor Switzerland all developed their own recreational cannabis infrastructure. It's also in tune with an acknowledgement by the United Nations bodies that punitive prohibition has failed and needs to be replaced with a harm reduction approach to drug control. There's that harm reduction word again. Seems like the theme of today. Created by the European Union Drugs Agency, EUDA, sounds like the DEA, the toolkit is to be known as Cannapol and designed to deliver an evidence-based approach to continental cannabis liberalization. Harm reduction. EUDA says its creation is the result of changing public opinion and a focus on harm reduction approach to drug use. The development has been welcomed by Michael Grafe, managing director of the German Cannabis Business Association. He told Business of Cannabis, the Cannapol project marks a careful step into the right direction for European cannabis regulation. While drug policy is a sensitive matter traditionally reserved to the national regulatory autonomy of member states, the EU is supporting national efforts through data collection, capacity building, best practice identification, as well as cooperation and information exchanges. The Cannapol project thereby provides a great opportunity to shape evidence-based policy making in collaboration between regulators, researchers, and other market and civil society participants. He did go on to say that the EUDA's limited competence in the wider EU bureaucracy means that Cannapol could be viewed as a promising box-ticking exercise. He added, it does represent a component of evidence-based policy, which is in line with accelerating regulatory developments at the EU level. EUDA has so far given little indication of the shape of the involving project. In response to Business of Cannabis, stated that it will examine the pros and cons of both homegrown and retail markets. Adult use spawned from the EU Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction. EUDA was launched last year in an increased budget and remit. It launched Cannapol in June at a 2-day meeting with experts from EU member states and appointed project partners Rand Europe and Trimbos Institute. During the first year of the 3-year project, these partners will undertake a data gathering exercise, which EUDA will involve approaching some 50 individual organizations across 10 to 12 countries to understand the pragmatics of existing or future policy implementation. This point was pursued by Stephen Murphy, co-founder and CEO of Europe's leading events, media, and data business, Prohibition Partners. We welcome any attempt to create a harmonized and evidence-led framework for cannabis reform across Europe, but for Cannapol to be effective, it must reflect the realities of the cannabis sector. So far, the engagement process has been vague. Despite repeated offers from industry to contribute insights, there's been little clarity on who is being consulted or how stakeholder feedback will be integrated into the toolkit. Regulatory frameworks do not operate in a vacuum. They evolve in response to real-world market dynamics. In countries like Switzerland, regulators have worked closely with businesses, patients, and civil society to co-develop practical and forward-looking models. If Cannapol is to avoid becoming a well-intentioned box-ticking exercise, it must ensure that dialogue with the industry is not just symbolic, but substantive. We hope EUDA and its partners will recognize that the success of any policy framework depends on building it with those who are shaping the market every day. This is interesting because they're kind of admitting that they don't know, which is interesting. But once again, we don't know how much power they have, how much things are going to change. The EU's been really slow to embrace all of this, and they're taking word from the UN, and I know the UN's global cannabis policy was really shaped by since the Nixon administration in the U.S. and what the U.S. has kind of told what the UN to do. And, I'm sure the EU is just kind of copy pasting all of this. And I know a couple of years ago, Germany was trying to move forward with their recreational program. And, the EU kind of told them to halt it and put it in reverse a little bit. And they've kind of just defaulted back to their medical program and kept their rec program kind of in this nonprofit private club, kind of like the old school California days. And so it's interesting to see how this is going to evolve. It looks like they're really just data gathering, which we've seen that before. They're figuring out how to tax it, how to, put a cage around this again. Hard to say what's going to come out of it. Obviously, nothing immediately. What do you guys think?
Man.
Well, it would be nice if they actually would make it fact-based. because that wipes out, the bulk of the bullshit we've been dealing with here since 1969 when Tim Leary had the old Marijuana Tax Act thrown out. And the nonsense has been going. And if you ask prohibitionists, they'll give you a set of facts that they believe they're emotional truths about this. I'd like to see more taking a look at, comparatively speaking, how addictive is cannabis compared to all the other drugs out there, and even like gambling and things like that, where we're worried about societal concerns of people engaging in certain activities that are habit forming. What does that mean? And how do we realistically look at the status of the marketplace for real, both the black and the green market out there? And then how really dangerous is this stuff? And should we think of it like we think of fentanyl and heroin, or should we think of it more like we think of a lesser habit-forming substance or activity that I think we can wrap our heads around without trying to bring in the law enforcement element, because that really hasn't worked. And the United States has been the tail wagging the dog for drug policy around the world since 1970. Even before that, we had an international convention back in 1960, which set up the idea of having, categories, or where do we put a drug as far as how dangerous is it? And that's been perverted because they stuck cannabis and psychedelics in Schedule 1 here, where it makes no sense. And here we are, what are we, 65 or 55 years later, and for God's sakes, they're still talking about the same asinine, non-scientific, substantive conversations they wanted to have in 1970. And we know enough facts now, it's just horseshit. It doesn't work anymore. So how do we get to a point where we actually bring people in who know what they're talking about? Scientists, operators, people who deal with substances, logistics and that, and have an honest discussion about where do we want to get and how do we get there? Because we keep having politics step in. Mm-hmm. It's like when you said, EU said, Germany, we're not ready for you to go forward. Well, fuck you. Mm-hmm. Maybe they are ready to go forward. And why is the EU telling them to stop? Because the United States and its prohibitionist mentality is pulling back on the reins. And at some point, they're going to break through this and realize soaking wet, smoking weed is probably less habit forming than teenage boys gambling on their goddamn phones. Mm-hmm. Okay. So how do we put that into context? Yes, it's habit forming, but it's about as habit forming as spanking your monkey. So how do we fix this and get to a point where we're not thinking, oh my God, my kid's smoking weed, their life is done. No, they're not smoking crank. They're not shooting fentanyl.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something to pay attention to. And can we get over the hysteria and talk about this like we're adults? Mm-hmm. Just don't know how to get there.
We heard this for years from the DEA, from the FDA. I mean, cannabis is like one of the oldest medicines known to mankind. And they're like, oh, we just need like another 3 years to study it. It's like people were smoking weed thousands of years ago. And it's like, you still another 3 years. It sounds like you're just, you're just avoiding the conversation as much as possible, just trying to put it off for more time. And then it's interesting that they say, oh, well, we need to collaborate with the industry in Europe. But if there's no industry, what data are you really getting? The further down the article, it actually says that, 2/3 of EU nation states, back this. And I know cannabis consumption is just as high in most European countries as it is in the US, if not higher in some places like the Netherlands or Spain. So why don't they actually just listen to what the people want more than anything? If there's that many people already consuming it that are obviously fine, they're not running out in the streets stabbing each other. There's not a breakdown of society. It's not like if you legalize it tomorrow, you're going to just, everything's just going to go to hell. Well, and we have examples of that now, actually. So, look at Canada, for example. They're fully recreational, and it's not like the place is on fire. I mean, it might be for other reasons. But, you can't correlate it directly to cannabis.
6th Street on Vancouver is on fire.
Yeah. It's always these political motives. And, I've spent enough time in Germany and in Europe that, I know some guys that were doing medical importing there, and everybody's dying for good American cannabis to be imported into the EU. They don't want Canadian stuff. They don't want stuff coming from Colombia.
You can't blame them.
So,
can't blame them.
Having this global commodity market, I think, could benefit everyone economically and as far as, you know, just making this a plant free, more free. But it's once again, I think this data gathering they're doing is how do we tax it? How do we keep it in a box? Because nobody really has been successful at that yet.
Well, and they're not going to be successful in that because it's too accessible on the main stage. And as long as people are over-regulating and overtaxing it, they're going to be fueling an illicit market all the way. And the more municipalities that don't allow for actual flower consumption and actual flower purchase of good quality flower, people are just always going to be turning to the illicit market one way or the other. I mean, 2/3 of the EU nations back adult use cannabis overall, but yet how many of these nations actually have a program where you can purchase flower? Like, you know, Amsterdam does, Spain does, you know what I mean? Germany doesn't, you know.
And even those are kind of clandestine. They're not really like frameworks.
Yeah. Exactly. They're not. It's not like, you know, Sweden. You can't go and purchase flower. They may, but they have a medical cannabis program. You know what I mean? Portugal and whatnot, and they all just want to allow these, you know, manufactured products and try to you know, basically, you know, manipulate a generation into not focusing on plant medicine and focusing on to manufactured products.
Well, if we're going to have an honest discussion, I mean, I've got children and grandchildren that came up in a world where they saw cannabis was out there, you know, competing with alcohol as a substance people like to use. We are now at a point where these generations of kids that are my kids and my grandkids' age are looking at this and going, no, honestly, smoking weed is safer than drinking wine or distilled spirits or beer. Okay? Let's talk about that. It's safer. You don't find a single death from cannabis, from traditional things that kill people from taking central nervous system depressing drugs. We don't see it anywhere. Okay. So with that framework in mind, and I mean, it's hard to argue that cannabis is safer than alcohol. Because even though they tried in the United States to hide all the good things that you might say about cannabis, I mean, like Taskin in UCLA in the 1980s, he said, well, smoking weed is safer than breathing air in Los Angeles. Holy shit, the DEA shit their pants. Yeah. Okay. It's the truth. Okay. And now we have statistics that people aren't killing each other on the highway. The sky didn't fall. Younger generation would prefer to smoke weed than drink alcohol. This is where this is going. And politicians have gotten themselves in trouble when they're trying to tell people what to think rather than go and ask them, what do you guys want from us? Because I still see that. You know, the people voting with their pocketbooks are saying, we want to have access to cannabinoids. We believe it's as safe, if not safer than alcohol. We want it. Okay. And we still have politicians telling people, well, we're going to go out and, like you said, Chris, put it in a box and control this. Yep. They're like, fuck you. I can grow a couple plants in my backyard. Nobody gives a shit what I put on it.
Catch me if you can.
And I'll make my own edibles. And you really can't stop this. So can we stop pretending like government can control this and look at it like, what do people want and how do we give it to them in a way that is relatively safe when you compare it to other psychoactive substances, potentially habit-forming behaviors and substances? How do we put it in context? Well, we're not having those discussions. That's a problem.
You have to. All these governments need to adopt the motto of weed for the people, and just take it from that perspective and give the people what they want, because that's what they want is weed for the people. And well, time will tell. I don't see the European Union kind of moving on this, but hopefully, they move slower than molasses. Slower than the United States.
Europe always moves slow with these kinds of things. I mean, they kind of will watch and learn from the mistakes that the U.S. makes. The U.S. tends to be pioneers with any kind of new industries. I saw this with telecom in the 90s with tech.com. And they're more careful. They don't want to be pioneers. That said, they will probably have a more regulated approach to it. Not necessarily better. Obviously I'm not a big proponent of regulation, but if it's applied correctly, it is important. Like we said, harm reduction, consumer safety, all these things, but they often just get used as political excuses.
Yep.
The real thing is taxation and control that they're after, and as long as they can throw those words around, there's always a subclass of people that will be like, oh yeah, save the children,
Exactly.
So we'll see how long that lasts, but by my expectation is it's slower than molasses for sure.
Exactly. And on that, we're going to roll into our next commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Introducing QUX Pay, or simply the Pay app.
Where you can pay like it's nobody's business.
Because it isn't. It's what everyone's been clamoring for. It's finally here.
Secure every payment. Your data stays private. QUX will never sell your data for profit, period. Pay friends, family, contacts instantly. No hidden fees. No limits. Spend on the move.
With this patented technology, you can use debit, credit, bank transfers, cash cards, and even crypto completely offline.
Amounts transferred through the Pay app reach their destination instantly. Transfers in a flash. As quick as sending a text. No more waiting around like crypto. Are you ready for the future of payments? The state of the art for money is finally here.
Data privacy and security protocols trusted by militaries and banks worldwide. QUX Pay, the Pay app.
Available as an app and point of sale system, personal and corporate accounts available. Go to QUXPay.com and start using the Pay app today.
There we go. And we're back. We are back, you guys. Well, I have two final stories for you guys today. Hope you guys are ready for this. Hope you guys enjoy this. Because, it's Wednesday, you guys. It's hump day. Hemp day. And new Texas THC rule enforcement begins today. That's right, Wednesday. The emergency THC regulations put into place earlier in September will be enforced starting today, Wednesday, October 1st. The rules issued by the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission were announced as part of the new state effort to prevent minors from accessing the substance. Just over a week after the September 23rd announcement of the rules, enforcement will now begin. The first rule adopted prohibits sales of consumable hemp products to minors. The second mandates age verification for selling the products as a whole. The reason given for adopting the rules are to prevent minors from accessing and using the products, which they say have negative impacts on young brains, and to prevent overall negative impacts on general welfare and public safety overall, and to comply with Abbott's executive order. Violations of the emergency rules will result in cancellation of the seller's TABC permit or license, the announcement says, and the Texas THC executive order does the following, you guys. Prevent sales to minors, now making it a crime to sell hemp-derived products to them. That always should have been. Sales near schools, churches, or other sensitive locations are not allowed under the executive order. Stores are not allowed to operate within 1,000 feet of those facilities. Enhanced testing and increased fees include ongoing monitoring for manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. And the state health department is to team up with the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission on regulations. Stores who fail to comply could risk losing their licenses, and the order came after a season-long attempt to ban the products outright. Alongside his order, Abbott justified his failure to sign the first bill passed by the legislature. In a quote, they say, "There's one thing everybody's agreed with, and that is we should ban it for kids. We tried to get that ban passed, and because it didn't pass, I wanted to use this opportunity to make sure that I empowered the State Department of Health Services to do what is already within their regulatory power," said Governor Greg Abbott. THC is the acronym for tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the active chemical compound in cannabis, and the compound produces a high when smoked, ingested, or otherwise consumed. Cannabis itself contains delta-9 THC in a high enough concentration to produce these effects, but hemp, which was legalized in the 2018 Farm Bill, does not. Hemp does, however, contain a wide range of CBD, a non-psychoactive compound commonly used for mild therapeutic benefits, and psychoactive THC derivatives in negligible amounts. The THC derivatives like Delta-8 and THCA can be extracted from legal hemp and concentrated into effective volumes. And they say these compounds, which are not technically true THC and therefore skirt the below 0.3% rule, have created a booming industry for legal products that are that residents in Texas and other states with marijuana bans to get the desired effects of cannabis without risking criminal charges. Critics of the THC derivatives regard the industry as the dangerous, unregulated result of a carelessly created loophole. Proponents of the proposed of the products point to veterans and others who suffer from PTSD and comparable afflictions who use the products for their medical benefits, you guys. Well, I think this is good news for Texas overall. I don't know anyone that has a store that wants to be selling to minors unless you're just, a piece of trash and whatnot. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
What is true THC, first of all?
Yeah, I had to say all that stuff because when I'm reading the article, I'm like, these people don't know what they're talking about, and I feel like a lot of times, the lawmakers are getting a lot of information from these different news outlets, and these news outlets aren't getting it, so they're just feeding these guys bad information.
Yeah. And there's no oversight to who writes these articles or fact checking.
No.
And this even goes against the Trump tweet that everybody's been talking about of him taking credit for the USDA farm bill.
Well, he should take credit for that. It was his bill.
Yeah. So, they're like, oh, well, it's this dangerous, unregulated loophole.
It's not a loophole. It's totally ridiculous that people call it that.
Yeah. It's really just a definition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we've defined it, and we've moved on from that, and we've created industries because of how things were defined.
Exactly.
So.
Definitions have consequences, Dale.
Well, they do, and historically, there was a difference between hemp and marijuana, or Indian hemp, whatever term you want to use for the more psychoactive, and people knew how to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, back in my day, if you rolled it up and smoked it and it didn't get you high, it's like, this is hemp. Ain't gonna do this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and hemp was put into the lexicon long before Raphael Mechoulam figured out what THC was. He figured that out in the early 1960s, and pharmaceuticals and biochemistry companies had been manufacturing different substances from molecules in plants.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ephedra plant is where they made amphetamines and MDMA and things like that. They've known since, the end of the 1800s how to do this. But when we start with a definition where people got their butt hurt about, we don't want people using marijuana, and now we've got a way to actually start quantifying it, from there it just went off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because now that plant naturally produces certain substances. Historically, I mean, no one even knew what Delta-8 was.
Yeah.
Okay. Knew what that shit was because it didn't get you didn't find enough of it to actually get you high.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had clients who take CBD, put it through a pharmaceutical process, and what comes out is THC.
Yep.
Okay. We can do that. And so now we have a definition that's antiquated. To be kind, it's fucking antiquated. Okay. And now, I mean, Forrest Gump figured out how to get around it. You can fight about whether it's a loophole or not, but the consequences of the definitions have left us where they are. There's an industry up. The industry is working on non-traditional cannabinoids people would deal with, and people want them. And so even the Republicans in Texas have figured out we're not going to gut this industry because there's too much money behind it to lobby the legislature. So we'll do what we should have done all the time. You can't sell it to people under 21. Okay? And that makes sense. I've had clients who sold tobacco products, and one of their knucklehead client or employees didn't check somebody's ID, and they happened to be an undercover, and bingo, bango, you're in trouble. We should have had this all along.
Yeah.
Because none of us want kids going and buying this shit.
Yep.
It doesn't mean they're not going to use it, because I certainly did when I was a teenager. We just don't understand. That seems the minimum we could do here. And it's mind-boggling how we can't sit down, close the doors, have a beer, talk about this like adults, and come to some agreements about what are the facts about this and get the hysteria out of it. But we live in an age of hysteria, and people still get hysterical about this kind of shit, and they shouldn't.
Yeah,
it ain't hurting nobody.
Exactly.
Really, it's not hurting anybody.
I'm totally with you. Do you have something else you want to throw in, Chris, before I move on?
I mean, in general, just looking at it, this is kind of a crap article. It just where it says what is THC. They're trying to explain it, but they're not explaining that THCA is a precursor and itself doesn't get you high. They're saying that Delta 9 is contained in cannabis, but not hemp.
Yeah, I know. Technically,
all fresh cannabis doesn't really even have Delta 9 in it either.
Yeah, I know.
And so they're not even setting up their argument correctly.
I know. This journalist did a horrible job, but that's one of the reasons that I definitely still wanted to cover it, was just to poke holes in the ridiculousness of this. And I was asking myself, I was like, should I just cut this out of my whole read of this story, or should I just point to the ridiculousness of it? And I was just like, people need to know what people are saying around the country in regards to this, because a lot of times what these people are saying is how we get to these screwed up endings. And so, you know what I mean? It's important for us to dispel the misnomers and the bad information, and help educate people overall onto what they should be saying, because like they're close but they're not. It's like they got nosebleed seats, but someone told them that they were going to sit right behind the bullpen.
Well, and in the context of cannabis and all drugs in general, science and technology always tends to challenge these regulations. There's always a loophole. I mean, a couple of years ago, you'd mentioned that there's a process. Dale, you mentioned it, that there's a process to convert CBD back into THC, and it's like, okay, they're trying to create these two classes of, like, we're going to put this kind of plant over here, this kind of plant over here, and some chemist comes along and is like, oh, well, watch me. I can just do this.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Exactly. Yep.
It's it's a magic trick, and it just shows how ridiculous it is for them to try to regulate it when it's all the same plant at the end of the day.
Exactly. It's all cannabis sativa L and the Controlled Substances Act.
Nobody's dying from using it.
So
See,
right.
That's where it's just mind-boggling. I mean, you can list the number of people that die from accidents and cancer and all that shit from smoking tobacco, drinking alcohol, and then all the overdose deaths and things we have from meth and fentanyl and heroin, all this stuff. You can line them up. And over cannabis, it's a big fat zero.
Yep.
Okay.
So we don't have this amount of arguments over nicotine vapes that have weird nicotine analogs, and nobody cares what's in that shit.
Yep.
But we keep going back.
They care about the flavoring, though. They do care about the flavoring, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, but what it points out, Chris, is human beings love their emotional truths. Okay. And when someone really believes something, because my mama told me, and it's just, my mom would never lie to me, you put all the facts you want in front of them, and they just kind of blow them off, right? We have to get beyond the emotional truths of substances, okay? Because that gets people's butts to really pucker up when you talk about, let's loosen the controls on these habit-forming substances. They don't know what to do with that, but we have to have that discussion. Because if we're going to put law enforcement resources into substances and controlling them, weed is not one to put a lot of money into from a law enforcement perspective. Fentanyl, crank, things like that, they're killing people. It's horrible. That's where law enforcement dollars should be targeted. And this should be treated more like alcohol and tobacco. I mean, I'll tell you again, declassify it, put it into ATF, and let this shit run like alcohol and tobacco. And let's move on. We still have the emotional truths that Evan Sabetz and all his fellow travelers throw at you. It's going to ruin Western society. Listen, it didn't ruin Chinese society, and they wrote about this 5,000 years ago. Okay? You can't find a single society where you can point to facts that it had a negative impact on their society. But you can find that with all these other substances, and especially in the last 150 years, we tried prohibit alcohol, it was a miserable goddamn failure. And people finally decided, okay, we're not going to do this. But then they throw in with, prohibiting cannabis, which is safer than alcohol and tobacco. We can't break through the emotional truth of it's a drug, and we can't just say okay to that.
Yep.
It's nonsense, but it's what we have to deal with here.
Exactly. And I have one final story for you, and it's a happy story, you guys. I think you'll find it happy, possibly. That way we can end Hump Day on a good story, possibly. Maybe not, but Mark Fogle to appear at a Pennsylvania cannabis festival, organizers say, you guys. That's right. Despite his release, Fogle's story remains a rallying cry for reform, and the festival said that in a statement. Because months after returning to Pittsburgh from a Russia prison, organizers of a Pennsylvania cannabis festival say Mark Fogle will be sharing his story at their weed event this weekend. The Butler native, who was imprisoned in Russia for marijuana possession, will appear at the Pennsylvania Can Fest in Kutztown, according to the festival's website, where organizers say Mr. Fogle will be advocating for legalization, sharing his experience to highlight the need for compassionate, equitable policies. In a quote, despite his release, Fogle's story remains a rallying cry for reform, the festival wrote. An organizer said the festival is honored to host Mr. Fogle. So honored that attendees will be able to enjoy their festival purchases at the Mark Fogle Lounge. In a quote, we are holding a lounge in his name where guests can learn about cannabis, prisoners, and how they can help advocate for reform, said Brianna Lauder, CEO of Zik Productions, the company putting on the festival. Mr. Fogle, an American history teacher, was arrested in Russia in 2021 after he was found with 0.6 ounces of medical marijuana, legally prescribed in the U.S. to treat his severe back pain. In his luggage at Sheremetyevo International Airport in Moscow, he returned to Pittsburgh in February following more than 3 years of imprisonment. With more than 200 vendors, CanFest on Saturday and Sunday is a canna-friendly event that blends advocacy, education, and entertainment, according to the event's website. Mrs. Lauder said Mr. Fogle will be attendance on both days, and attempts to reach Mr. Fogle for comment have not been successful by this publication. The blog post said festival organizers also extended a formal invitation to Governor Josh Shapiro to participate in a powerful call for change. And Zik Pro LLC, the event management company hosting the festival, said it requested a private meeting with Mr. Fogle and Mr. Shapiro during the event. But in a quote, Governor Shapiro's leadership is critical to ensuring no one else faces such injustice for using a substance that is legal for medical purposes here and for adult use purposes in neighboring states. Trish Johnson, the CFO of Zik Pro LLC, said in a statement. A spokesperson for Mr. Shapiro said the governor is not scheduled to attend the festival this weekend, and in his 25-26 budget proposal earlier this year, Mr. Shapiro called for the legalization of adult use cannabis in Pennsylvania, and the state permits medical use currently, you guys. Well, look at this. They're going to have a Mark Fogle consumption lounge over here at the Can Fest in Pennsylvania this weekend. This sounds great. I almost want to go and check this out and welcome Mark home. This sounds like a cool event to go to. What do y'all have to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, don't bring weed with you to Russia. Research the laws of any country you travel to, and be prepared for whatever consequences. Some countries will give you a slap on the wrist. Russia is not one of those. But he was, especially coming from the U.S.
Chris, he was a teacher. He was just trying to promote higher education in Russia.
Yeah. Even with medical need, it's hard to argue that sometimes, especially when, a country like Russia that could, totally pin you against the wall as if you are a political prisoner, even if you're not. But, happy for him and his family that he's home and that he gets to smoke weed in peace again. And I think that's the most important thing. And if he is used as a spokesperson to help Pennsylvania pass recreational, I think that's a great thing as well.
Well, he's not the only one. I mean, Russia is a place where if you go there with any cannabis products, you're just stupid.
Yeah, you're screwed.
Real
Exactly.
stupid. Don't be doing that.
Mm-mm.
But, something similar happened to me. Okay. And no one really pointed to the federal government and said, you guys are horrible and draconian like the Russians. This country has done the same thing to many people who they charge with cannabis crimes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And, I did 5 years in federal prison for shit that you can do in your backyard today.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of layers of people out there that, Luke is still out there trying to recover from what happened to him, Luke Scarmazzo.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people that were unfairly treated for reasons that were purely political in this country too. Mm-hmm. I would just hope that we could have some factual, frank, comparative discussions about, hey, we can say that Russians are all this and that and the other thing. Right here in the United States, the shit's still happening right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so how do we have that discussion? And I'm happy to be part of these discussions. I sat in prison thinking about this for year after year. It's like, how in the fuck am I here when other people are out selling this stuff, openly?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have an answer for that. And we really need to have those discussions, because if it's bad to go to Russia and get popped and thrown right in prison, go fly into Arkansas, okay? Go fly into Alabama with weed and see what happens to you there. I don't think you'll like the experience if you get caught.
Well,
Let's
and
talk about that.
even if you remove cannabis from the argument, it's easy to point the finger at whatever country and be like, oh, look at how they treat their own citizens or other people. When, like you said, Dale, we in the U.S. have done this to our own citizens over and over again. While, for nonviolent, whatever offense it might be, where we have violent criminals that walk the streets. And so, at the danger of making it political or polarizing, or, a lot of the media wants us to hate Russia right now for one reason or another. And in this case, they may be using cannabis as the gasoline there. Like you said, we're not far from the shift that's happened, and it still hasn't happened federally. I know people that have federal charges for cannabis still, and there's no change for them. So even with the state rules changing, we haven't really come that far to be able to point the finger at our neighbors. So once again, like I said, all the best to this gentleman. I'm glad that he's free, but yeah, it's kind of a weird argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, congratulations. Go ahead, please, Dale.
Smoking weed is not what we call malum in se. It doesn't involve any moral turpitude. You're not lying, cheating, stealing, hurting other people. And we like to focus on nonviolence as sort of a marker here. We don't want to send people to prison for nonviolence. If you're a fucking thief, okay, or a liar, okay, I don't think people that do that kind of stuff should just get a walk. Now,
yeah, we were actually just talking about this yesterday with some other legacy growers that I know, that growing weed is probably the most honest profession on earth, because you're creating something out of the ground and giving it to someone that willingly wants it, and they're going to pay for it. I can't think of anything more honest. There's no coercion. There's no, I don't have to persuade someone. They want it. I'm not shuffling money around. I'm not Ponziing. I'm not charging interest on top of something. It's the most organic, honest profession I think that exists.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and if we could get a legitimate green market up and operating, then the people who operate outside of that, we could get rid of the really bad actors. The cartels and things like that, they're in it because there's money here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If we can gut some of that really easy money, and we'll have less of the violence involved in this.
Yep.
Because, if you're carrying around, 150, 200 pounds of weed, and you're taking it to New York, and they're going to give you a box full of money to come back with, along the way there, you're subject to being, robbed. A lot of bad things can happen to you, which we don't want in this. And it shouldn't have to be there because no one's cooking fentanyl. This is not methamphetamine. We really need to have an honest discussion about what are the troublesome, molecules out there that we're really struggling with from a personal and public health perspective. Okay, because someone smoking meth will steal every ounce of copper they can find, take it in the corner and flat back for their next line of coke or whatever. Those are health and safety issues.
Well, then they'll come back for your catalytic converter, Dale, too. Don't forget that part.
Oh, yeah. And see, people that are smoking weed aren't knocking off, stop and robs. They're not stealing your damn converters or a bunch of copper, because we can, even in an illegal market, you can get weed for a relatively reasonable price today. Okay? It's readily available. And we're not seeing the problems. And for God's sakes, when do we get to have those discussions about the practical problems faced with the different substance markets we have in this country and around the world? What really is harming us and what's over exaggerated, and come up with realistic plans to get people what they want so they're not out stealing and doing other things, and punish the right people for doing things that actually harm our society. We're not even talking about that. And I mean, that's, pass me a joint and let's have a discussion about that. Give me a beer, a shot of whiskey, whatever. Let's shut the fucking doors, bring in some pizza, and let's have some honest discussions about what we want to achieve here and see if we can take it out to the general public. But, that's the pipe dream we'd all like to see happen here. I don't know that it's gonna.
Yeah, well, on that note, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. And big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Catalyst Cannabis for helping us keep the lights on over here, and thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day, and Cloud Media partners Elias and Kai are somewhere in the metaverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.